The sun was sinking low, spilling molten orange across the dusty fields of southern Texas. The air shimmered in the heat, and birds lazily traced wide circles in the sky. Cornstalks swayed in the wind like they were whispering secrets to one another. On the edge of this quiet farmland stood a weathered wooden house, humble, worn, yet heavy with memories. To anyone passing by, it looked like just another retired veteran's home, tucked away from the world, silent and unremarkable. But for those who truly knew him, this place was hallowed ground. His name was Daniel Hayes, though everyone around here just called him Dan. He was a retired soldier, a man who spent his days tending vegetables and raising cattle. On the surface, he seemed calm, even gentle, with a warm, weathered smile and eyes that hinted at kindness. But beneath that quiet exterior was a storm of stories few could imagine. Daniel Hayes hadn't always been a farmer. Once, he had been the most feared Delta Forces commander in U.S. military history, a man who walked through fire and shadow, leading missions deep into enemy territory, staring down cartels, warlords, and terrorists alike, and always coming back alive. His body bore the scars of war, and his soul carried ones that no one could see. After 25 years in combat, Dan craved nothing more than peace. He wanted to leave behind the chaos, the bloodshed, the weight of brothers lost and memories too heavy to speak aloud. In arms, endured the silence of empty barracks, and had lived long enough to understand that glory meant little when there was no one left to share it with. His wife had passed years ago, and his daughter, Alina, now lived in the city, only able to visit when life allowed. His farm had become his sanctuary, a place where he could finally inhale deeply without the weight of war pressing on his chest. A place where memories could fade into the rhythm of planting and tending, cattle lowing softly in the background. But peace has a way of attracting shadows. One warm evening, as the last golden streaks of sunlight vanished and the smell of roasting beef drifted through the farmhouse, Daniel froze. A sound sliced through the low, ominous growl of multiple engines approaching. Instantly, his instincts flared. He set down his fork, heart tightening, listening. These were not the sounds of neighbors dropping by, not the rumble of friendly trucks. No, this was deliberate, coordinated, too purposeful to be ordinary. Headlights pierced the darkness. A convoy of armored pickups rolled up his dirt driveway, their dark windows hiding the faces within. Bed rails fitted with mounted weapons that gleamed in the fading light. Men spilled out, masks covering their faces, rifles slung over shoulders with casual menace. Daniel didn't need to ask who they were. He had seen men like this countless times before cartel enforcers, the kind who thrived on fear. The leader, stocky and brutal-looking, a scar etched across his cheek, stepped forward. He barked in broken English, voice rough and dangerous. "Old man, this land it's ours now. You give, or we take." His tone carried a promise of violence, one Daniel recognized immediately: arrogance, the kind that comes from spilling blood with no consequence. Daniel didn't flinch. He stood on his porch, arms crossed, calm as a summer breeze. To the men before him, he looked like just another aging rancher, frail, weathered, harmless. No threat at all. But inside, his blood ran steady, his breathing controlled, and his mind was already racing. He calculated the distance to every weapon, memorized each man's stance, traced the weak points in their formation. The cartel had made a grave mistake. They thought they were here to raid a farm. They had no idea they were stepping onto the battlefield of the deadliest. Delta Force's commander in US history. Yet this was a fight Daniel had never faced before. Not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq, not in South America. He was completely alone. No squad at his back, no air support, no reinforcements, just one man against 20 heavily armed cartel soldiers. And though his instincts were razor-sharp, his body was no longer that of a young warrior. Knees ached from decades of jumps. Shoulders stiffened with every movement. The fighter within him had to wrestle with the limitations of an old soldier's body. Calling the sheriff crossed his mind, but he knew how deep the cartel's roots ran. By the time law enforcement arrived, his land would be ashes, and his blood would be soaking the dirt. This fight was his, and his alone. The cartel men advanced, sneers on their faces, boots crunching against the gravel. One of them laughed as he kicked Daniel's fence. "We warned you, VJO," growled the scar-faced leader. "Now you pay." Daniel didn't answer. He turned slowly, deliberately, and walked back inside his house, as though surrendering. The men laughed, spat on the ground, and mocked him. But inside, Daniel's sanctuary began to change. The quiet farmhouse, the place of peace and solitude, was transforming into something else entirely: a trap, a battlefield, a final stand built from years of strategy and experience. Every corner, every door, every shadow became part of his plan, prepared for a day like this. Behind the old bookshelf, hidden in a secret room, lay the tools of his former life: rifles, knives, gear he had promised himself he would never touch again. His hands shook as he opened the chest, not from fear, but from the flood of memories that hit him all at once. Brothers screaming in firestorms, missions gone horribly wrong, faces he would never see again. He had left that world behind to protect the fragile peace he had carved out here. But peace had been ripped away, burned to ash by the roar of cartel engines in his yard. Daniel strapped on his vest, loaded his rifle, and whispered under his breath, "One last mission." Then the night erupted. The cartel soldiers, expecting an easy target, were instead met with the wrath of a man who had walked through hell and returned. Daniel moved like a shadow, weaving through his land with the precision of a seasoned predator. He cut the power to the farmhouse, plunging everything into blackness. Gunfire erupted. Shots rang out, men fell, and confusion rippled through the attackers. But the cartel was relentless. They adapted, they pushed, they brought grenades crashing into the barn. Flames licked the night sky, smoke curling over the fields. Daniel was pushed harder than he had been in years. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but he pressed on. Every movement was calculated, every shot deliberate. He wasn't just defending his land. He was fighting for memory, for the ghosts of brothers he had lost, for the peace he had finally built, and for the life that was slipping through his fingers. Every heartbeat was a countdown, every breath a defiance against the darkness closing in around him.